Hello, wrestling family. Welcome to Sound the Whistle with IHSA wrestling official Tony Clark. Each week, I will bring you interviews with prominent figures in the sport of high school wrestling. Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast. Today, I will be talking with head coach from Stevenson High School, Shane Cook. How are you tonight, Coach?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Coach Clark.
Well, thank you for doing this. Taking time out of your busy schedule. The officials and the rest of our wrestling family truly appreciate your contribution and what you've been able to do with your team and the passion you bring to our great sport.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'd say anything that Stevenson has been able to accomplish over the years is a testament to an awesome coaching staff and the guys that I've been blessed to have around me. So really appreciate all the guys that we have on our staff, and they're the ones that really make the thing go.
No, and I've watched you, from your youth, your Waukegan days, to your Stevenson days, and my hat's off to you. You do an awesome job with your team. You do have an outstanding coaching staff. For a bunch of young guys, you guys are fun to be around. You guys are always pleasant. I've never heard an official say a bad word about working at Stevens. So again, that's a testament to you, your team, and like you said, that awesome coaching staff you have. So we really appreciate you guys.
No, thank you, Coach. We one of the things that we definitely pride ourselves on at Stevenson is that we understand that wrestling is secondary to us, just making sure that we're building relationships and contributing to the lives of the young people that are on our team. But then that also obviously extends to everybody else in the wrestling community as well. We have the understanding that we're all in this together, and we're all working to try and influence and help our young adults to become the best version of themselves, and that includes coaches, wrestlers, parents, and officials. So that's always our attitude and our philosophy.
All right, that's great. Just going to get your opinion on a couple of things. I don't know if you've heard the National Federation posted the approved rule changes earlier today. So I'm going to ask you about a couple of them. One is, starting next year, we no longer have a hair length rule. That is gone. Kids can wear their hair in the back, on the sides, and in the front as long as they want. How do you think that's going to impact your team, or more importantly, how do you think that's going to impact our sport?
Well, I think that the person that it probably impacts the most is the wrestler that's got that long hair. I'll tell you right now, I haven't had a haircut with the stay-at-home order. I haven't had a haircut in 7 weeks now, and it's hanging down in my eyes. So I'm wearing a headband when I work out and trying to keep it out of my eyes. And those wrestlers that are out there battling and scrapping and competing, and when that hair falls down in their eyes, it's definitely going to make it more challenging on them. But obviously that's the personal situation that they'd have to make. And if they're able to wrestle and go out and compete and be successful with it, I honestly don't see a problem with it at all. It never bothered me when I had to wrestle against a guy who might have had longer hair, whether it be in practice or whether it be in the off season. To me, I think it'll have very little impact on what it is that we do.
Do you think it's going to help you with recruiting kids now that they don't have to cut their hair?
Yeah, I don't know if we've had a kid at Stevenson that's been the only reason that they haven't come out for wrestling. Would just be their hair. Usually there'd be some other factors that would influence that. I think that would be a minority, but it might help in the sales pitch. We definitely try and get into the hallways at Stevenson and into the weight room and try and encourage any and every kid out there to, hey, just come and try it. And if there's a kid with long hair, that could definitely help in that conversation with them. Now being able to say, hey, you don't even have to cut your hair. So we'll see. That's yet to be discovered. I hope that we obviously hope to capture any and all kids at our program as long as they're willing to work hard and live by the rules of the program and the values of the program. So whether they've got long hair or not, we'll take them. But hopefully we capture a few more that have some long hair now because of the rule change.
Yeah, another major rule change is wrestlers starting next season will be required to weigh in their competition singlet. We will no longer separate male and females. All wrestlers will be in the weigh-in room at the same time, and they cannot step on the scale unless they're in the competition, either singlet or the two-piece uniform. What type of impact do you think that's going to have?
I think that everybody will just make the adjustment. I mean, what is a singlet weight total in ounces? Depending on the material, a lot of these are pretty thin. I mean, is it 5 ounces? Maybe 6. Yeah, I don't know. You might get a half a pound out of a certain singlet, depending on the size of the kid and the size of the singlet. But correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, most international wrestling, the weigh-ins have been, and anything that's been with USA Wrestling, the weigh-ins are done in a singlet, correct?
Correct. You are
so
right.
we're essentially now the National Federation is essentially just getting on board with what most of the world has done previously. So I don't really see very much impact in that changing anything. As far as males and females being in the weigh-in area at the same time, I mean, everybody's going to be clothed, so that shouldn't really make a difference.
Good, yeah, because a lot of thought went into that at the federation level, and the feeling is it's going to make the weigh-in process a lot more fair, especially with the females. And I know you have some females on your team. They won't have to be put out in the hallway, or you got to go find some female out of the lunch lady, Doris type of person to come in and weigh them in. Now they'll all be part of the official weigh-in process from here forward.
Yeah, and I would say that's definitely a positive move. We were fortunate at Stevenson. We always had a female athletic trainer, or even one of our female locker room attendants who was able to weigh in our gals. But it was always an additional step that we had to take to make sure that was done legitimately and done equitably. And when you're at a big dual meet that night and you got a lot of things going on, making sure that the female trainer was available at the appropriate time was always an additional step that we had to take. So yeah, now we're just able to knock it all out at once. And I think after the first time that it's done, like everything else, I think everyone will just adjust, and then no one will think of it any differently moving forward. Once everybody gets used to it after the first 1 or 2 times.
So let's look at some of the past rule changes. How has the stalling rule change as far as the backing out of bounds, pushing out of bounds, how do you think that has worked? And are you seeing consistency in the officials in making that call fairly?
I would have to say no. If any of the rule changes that have been probably the most inconsistent, and now I wouldn't say, I would say it's this one, but not inconsistent for individual officials. For example, when you've called it the same way, when we've had you on our mat, you've called it the same way, whether we're wrestling at the Barrington tournament or whether we're wrestling in a dual meet or whether it's the state tournament series. You have maintained the same consistency, and so have guys, input any of the other officials. It's just the difference between how you call it versus how another guy calls it. That's where the inconsistency takes place. Not Coach Clark is calling it differently on Friday than he did on Saturday. Not there at all. But Coach Clark calls it differently as opposed to some of the other guys. yeah, there have been some inconsistencies there, which is oftentimes a little bit challenging because I think the intent of the spirit of the rule is to make sure that we have continued action, to make sure that guys are fighting and working as best they possibly can to be able to stay in the center. So there's fewer restarts, and we're able to put ourselves in position to be able to score more points. But when you have different officials, and then when it's different ways, it can get a little bit. It's called different ways. It can be a little bit confusing for the kids and the coaches alike.
Do you see the inconsistency more during the season? Does it get better? Let's say like the Lake County tournament, because that's later in January. Are we getting better there? Or are we getting better regional sectionals and state as we go on?
Yeah, again, as I said, I think that, especially the higher level varsity officials that we're fortunate enough to see throughout the year, I think that those guys all call it fairly the same, from my experience, throughout the season. Seeing if I see, for example, Jason Heyerdahl, who we see a handful of times throughout the year. If I see him in December at a dual meet, and then we saw him again at the Lake County Invitational, he's going to be fairly consistent. It's just the fact that he might call it differently than other guys. That's been my experience. It's not like it changes or fluctuates as much throughout the season with individual guys.
Okay, so it's more of an official to official.
That's exactly what I'm trying to explain. Okay. Yeah, more from an official to official. That's the inconsistency. Not as much have I seen to where it's different in November than it is in January.
Okay. Another rule change that happened a couple of years ago. What are your feelings that we allow more action outside of the boundary line as far as near fall points, as far as being pinned out there? What do you feel about that?
I love it. I love it. It definitely has kept the action going. The old rule, it never made any sense to me to where the clock could still be running. Wrestler A could have wrestler B on his back, but because his shoulders were out of bounds, he wasn't able to score near fall during that time. Correct? I mean, that was part of the rule, right?
Yeah, that was the old rule. Yeah, that was the old rule.
That was, and that never made any sense to me. Is there's the clock is running. We are still competing. The match is going on, and the same move, if you pulled it 4 feet towards the center, you're going to be able to score points. But because it's 4.4 feet in the opposite direction, and wrestler B is out of bounds, then you're not able to score points. That was always a head scratcher for me. So now I really appreciate that rule, and I like the fact that we're keeping action going and creating more opportunities to be able to score points. I'd even like to. I know that it won't happen just based on spacing it within different gymnasiums and competition areas in schools and the size of our mats. But I love the college rule to where if you've got one toe in, we're still wrestling, and we're still have the opportunity to be able to score points. So the new rule change for high school, allowing more action out of bounds, is obviously more in line with what college is able to do, and I'm definitely in favor of it.
The uniform switch a couple of years ago, you guys have some pretty sharp two pieces. Has that helped you keep kids, or has it helped you recruit kids that they don't always have to wear that singlet?
I think for some freshmen, it's made an impact, which has helped us to be able to encourage kids to get them out. I think it's been very beneficial. And looking at some of our junior high programs, our feeder schools that feed into Stevenson, I know Coach Andrew Ortman. He's one of our close friends. He's at Aptekissick, and I know that he had some two-piece uniforms for the junior high level, And I know that definitely helped to get some kids out. So I think it was a positive move to adopt that rule. I mean, whether a kid's wearing a singlet or if they were wearing a t-shirt and shorts, it doesn't affect the score or the outcome of the match. At least it shouldn't. So to allow that, if we're able to get 1% more kids out for the great sport of wrestling because we allow them to wear a tight-fitting t-shirt and a pair of short shorts, then I'm all for it. Especially if it doesn't affect, if it really doesn't affect the wrestling.
Okay. Now we talked about how you see the officiating and stalling in general. Stalling aside, what's your feeling on the officiating at the varsity level here in Illinois right now?
Top notch. I think that we are very fortunate to have guys that are invested and that are passionate about the great sport and passionate about Illinois wrestling, and they make this a part of what it is that they choose to do. It's been really encouraging for all of us to have, especially where we're at in the northern suburbs. We get some really high level guys, and I honestly have no complaints as far as the varsity level guys. Now, I know the concern moving forward is that our numbers are down, and we're going to be facing an officiating crisis if we don't start recruiting younger guys to be able to get into the ranks and start working their ways up. But with where we're at right now in the varsity level, I make it a point to review our officials consistently, and all the ones that we had seen throughout the years. I mean, I'd give them all, especially in recent years. I'd give all the guys that we see consistently high scores and high remarks, and definitely credit for what it is that they do. It's a challenging job. It's real easy to be an official from the bleachers or to be an official from the bench, but actually being out there, and those guys, I take my hats off to them. I'm really thankful for what it is they do.
So an official who comes into Stevenson High School, or let's say you're an away team, anyone that does a match, what is it that you have as an expectation? What are you looking for in the person that's going to call your match, or for that night or for that duel?
Number one, to be consistent. To make sure that from match to match, from position to position, you're calling things the same. Now, again, from official to official, that's going to vary because we're all different people and have different experiences, and different guys are going to call things, a little bit differently. But as long as that official that we've got on a varsity night conference dual meet, if he's consistent from position to position and from match to match, that's probably our most important. And then, number two, the best of the best are the guys that are able to really call it fairly and call it right when it's a heated, emotional, intense situation. Man, seeing those guys in work, and you're one of them, Coach, and it'd be a long list of others that I could rattle off. But guys that are able to maintain their composure when things get intense and get heated, that's always appreciated, and we know that's definitely a hard thing for those guys to do. But those would be the two things: calling it, being consistent, obviously, and then just maintaining their cool in the tough situations and in the hard ones.
Yeah, and having officiated Stevenson High School matches with you at the Realm, you have a serious compassion. You have a serious intensity, and I still tell this story. You versus Lake Forest this year, and it comes down to the last match, and I sidestep it. I could have blown the whistle on the last match because that was going to decide it, but I let second-year official Nima hold the helm. So you talk about you could have taken me to the table and had some words about that, but you were a fair person about it. You trusted Nima and I to try to get it right, but I still tease Nima about that to this day. That he was put in a position at a varsity level with two teams going at it, and with the passion that was going on in that room, and we just had, we had to get it right. So I know that was a little shocker to you at the beginning, but we survived it, and I appreciate you letting him have that opportunity because we had fun that night.
I'll tell you what, that was an intense, heated environment. Matt Fiodorosa at Lake Forest, he does an awesome job as far as, creating that environment with the bleachers that he sets up around the mat. He's got the light that comes down from the ceiling, so it spotlights on the mat. It was a varsity only highlighted dual meet, so all of the lower level kids from Stevenson, from Lake Forest, were all in the stands, and it literally was surrounded by bleachers by the kids and the fans, and that was intense. It went back and forth, and we found ourselves down big and had to have some guys really come through and get some bonus points for us. And like you said, came down to the last match, and I just want to take this opportunity to say how much we appreciate Nima. I haven't seen an official that's grown in the sport as fast as he has in such a short amount of time. So that's been really impressive and really fun to watch. And then obviously we appreciate all that he does as far as the video work when he was down at the state tournament, and then his video work throughout the year. But yeah, he had to step up, and he definitely did, because that was an intense, that last bout with the dual meet being on the line at 132. It could have gone either way. That was a 50-50 match, and he definitely got the job done. So yeah, no, for sure. And you know what? And I'll just say this is a testament to you too, Coach. I mean, you saw an opportunity to be able to take a young guy that's been hungry and put him in that situation, and he can't read about or study about what an experience would be like, what that experience would be like. I mean, you only know what that's like if you've lived it and if you've been in it. And Neiman got in the mix, and he cut his teeth on that one for sure.
Yeah, I hadn't seen a Stevenson duel that intense. I go back a couple of years. Libertyville was at your place, and the conference title was going to be on the line that night. And you had packed that large gym. You guys just went at it. I mean, it was a back and forth duel between you and Libertyville, which has created a great rivalry in the conference over the years. I mean, for a long time while you were building, it was always Libertyville Grant. But then you have had the ability to make it about Stevenson and anybody else that steps on the mat with you. So again, that's it's very exciting. Like I said, you run a very intense style when your wrestlers are out there, and I know a lot of the officials appreciate that. They know your kids are going to go out there, and they're going to have to keep up. It's not a lot of stall calls when your kids are on the mat.
Well, yeah, we definitely try and instill an intense, high-paced style of wrestling at Stevenson, to where we just want kids to be hungry to go out and try and score as many points as they possibly can. That's the way that we try and practice, and then try and carry that over onto the competition mats. So yeah, that's it's part of our philosophy and part of who we are and what we try and do with our kids. So no, thanks. I appreciate the compliment.
What do you say to new officials that come into your building, or you see them sometimes in away duels? Do you often approach them and say, "Hey, great job," or do you have a lot of them come over to you asking you what you thought?
Yeah, I always try and make sure that we reach out to the officials, and it's one of the things that we talk about every year with we're fortunate we've got a large coaching staff, and oftentimes have a lot of young guys that were former wrestlers that'll come back and be a part of our staff. And we always try and try and make sure that those young guys on our staff understand that, hey, these officials, these are guys that, they've got wives and families, and they've got lives, and they really care about being here and about getting this right. Nobody's going to end up being a millionaire, being a IHSA state wrestling official. That's for sure. So these guys are oftentimes just doing it for the love of the sport. And if there's a new guy that comes on, I always try and make sure that I make myself available to them and shake their hand and just give them some understanding that, hey, we're all in this here together. And we're not all always going to get it right, for sure. Not as coaches and not as officials. And then, if there's different times, I think it's often appropriate, not during the match, if there's a tough situation, but if there's a younger guy, sometimes circling back with him, or a new official, circling back with him even after the match, or I guess when they've been removed from the situation a little bit. I try to do that when it's appropriate, just to get them to potentially think differently, or maybe they could help me think differently based on what it was that they saw. So just having an overall attitude that, hey, we're all working together here to try and help each other and to try and make each other better. And we've all continued to have opportunities to be able to learn from each other and grow.
Yeah, and you had mentioned about our shortage. Yeah, our shortage is really serious. We're what I call an aging workforce. You take a guy like me. I've been out there since age 19. I got over 35 years on the mat now. I got less ahead of me than behind me, and a lot of my state level officials, we're all in that same boat. So yeah, we're really, really trying to get new guys to come in, but just like you experienced as a coach, trying to get a wrestler to come out and at least try it. It's getting tough at our level. What do you see? Because a lot of officials tell me all the fans are being mean to me, the coaches are being mean to me. It's hard for me to see it at my level because I don't get that same feeling. But are you seeing a change in our fans? Because wrestling fans, we're a tight family, and we're usually pretty accepting of people. But in your experiences, are you seeing that type of bitterness from the fans towards officials?
Well, I can just say this. This is something my mom taught me as a young kid. She always said, well, where there's people, there's problems. And especially if you sometimes throw in a heated, intense sport like you've got in wrestling, to where, it's basically a street fight with rules. And oftentimes if you've got, parents that don't fully understand the sport, and oftentimes, people can get intense and they can maybe say some things that they don't mean. And there's definitely going to be some problems. I haven't witnessed a whole ton of problems in recent years, but it seems like every big tournament, there's always somebody from the stands that's yelling or complaining and upset about something. I would just encourage any official that's young to the game, that's brand new in this, just watch the older guys like yourself, and the guys like Jeff Bowers and like Tim Dodge, who longtime state officials, to how those guys oftentimes respond to the nonsense that comes out of the stands. And I've seen you guys at different times where you'll address things when it has to be addressed, but then other times you'll just ignore it and let it not bother you. So I would encourage those young guys to just model those that have gone before them, that have been the most successful as officials. And that's oftentimes the guys that they don't let it get to them, don't let it affect them.
Yeah, we try,
because it's gonna continue to happen. You're not gonna change crazy parental behavior. There's always going to be an issue, because where there's people, there's oftentimes problems.
We're by nature, we're aggressive. The athletes are aggressive, the coaches are aggressive, and the good official has an aggressive attitude. Do you feel the officials as a whole are giving the coaches their respect, especially when you go to the table to ask a question? Do you feel we're treating you fairly there?
Yeah, for sure. I would say I definitely, and maybe some guys that knew me when I was young at Stevenson. I'm 42 years old now. I think this next season will be my 20th year of coaching high school wrestling. I probably went to the table more in my younger years than I do in my later years. I've just oftentimes found that sometimes it's just not, you're not going to change a call. It's already been made. So if there's not a opportunity to change it, oftentimes just let it ride, maybe circle back with the official after the match or after the dual meet and just kind of get what it is that they were thinking. But anytime that I have gone to the table in recent years, or I feel like I've been treated with the utmost respect. Hopefully the guys that I brought to the table would be able to say the same about me, that I was respectful of them as well. And just in an effort to try and make sure that we got it right. But yeah, I haven't had any issues at the table myself.
No, and I've watched your like I said, you got a pretty good you have a young coaching staff for all intended purposes. And I think you guys do a pretty outstanding job. Even at the lower level, I think you guys do a real good job. You guys seem to get a lot of what I call newbie wrestlers. You may have a few experienced kids in there, but you get a lot of newbie wrestlers. And you're one of those teams that really, really tries to get those kids matches, even if it means they're going around twice that night. You guys really are intense about that. And I think that's a testament to the job you're doing. You don't let a kid walk out of there that didn't get on the mat and didn't get, the parents didn't get a show that night.
Yeah, it's really important, and it's more challenging for a program like ours. Just be it that, I mean, we'll start the season with 110 kids on the roster. Now, we don't finish with that by any means. We usually finish, 85, 90 kids, depending on the year. But it can be challenging to try and get all those kids competitions. So we really make every effort we possibly can to try and get those lower level kids that are new to the sport, get them matches, but as important, make sure that they get appropriate matches where they're wrestling against kids that are of similar experience as them, because nobody gets any better, just going out there and getting mauled by somebody that's been wrestling. If you're new to the sport and wrestling against somebody that's been doing it for 2 or 3 years, that doesn't help the more competitive wrestler nor the new kid. So yeah, we definitely try and create those opportunities and always try and have our assistant coaches, freshmen and JV guys that are in charge of making those matchups, be hustling and hungry and making every effort to get kids to compete, because it's a tough sport, and it's a grind, and it's emotionally grueling and physically demanding. And, these kids work hard in all the programs throughout the state, and to get to Friday and Saturday, if they don't get a match, that's really disappointing for them. And then you can oftentimes lose kids. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep them competing for sure.
Yeah, and that as an assigner for your conference and at your school, that really helps me, because oftentimes knowing that you have Saturday quads where you're just trying to get kids matches, it's a low intensity environment in those type of quads. It allows me as the assigner to sometimes send a new official there, or send an official that's been around a while, but they're still trying to learn the game. But you guys have been very accommodating, and making those guys feel pretty good, and helping them, learn along with the kids in some of those mega quads that you run.
I'll tell you what, nobody is better in the business than making sure a new official is welcomed and and making sure that they understand that, hey, we're all in this together, than Coach Mike Martinez, who's on our staff. I mean, he's a guy that goes above and beyond, especially on a lot of those Saturdays where he's been in charge of making sure that those lower level competitions, we're able to get kids matched up. He's been really awesome in that aspect in so many ways, but especially in that aspect. What helps out is on a lot of those Saturdays when we bring in different teams, we'll even just scrap the team score. As you said, it's a little less competitive. There's a little bit less on the line, and all we're doing is just trying to get kids matched up appropriately, and then just let them go wrestle and get matches. So that's been helpful for us as a program to develop kids, but then, as you said, helpful as well to be able to get some of those new officials, get them some experience in that type of environment.
You're correct about Coach Martinez. He has no problem putting an arm around the official and say, today was a little rough, but when I see you next week, let's work on a few things. He's like an old grandfather when it comes to dealing with people like that.
Oh man, he is an old soul, that's for sure. He's got a lot of wisdom, and I'm blessed to learn from him every day.
He's a good guy, and you happen to have replaced his father, who was a longtime coach there, Lino. And I remember Lino from back in my younger days. He was intense. I think he just had a different mindset of kids to work with back then. Because I remember Stevenson when I was in high school. Stevenson wrestling, it's something to do. That's how we looked at it back in those days. But Lino started turning it around. He got his first state placers and things of that nature, and then you came along, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think you brought the first state champion to Stevenson High School, correct?
Yeah, we were very fortunate to have the opportunity to coach Danny Sabatello, who was a two-time state champ in 2009, 2010. But yeah, all of that, none of that happens, and anything that we've been able to do at Stevenson, none of it happens if the foundation had not been laid by Lino Martinez and Michael Martinez and the coaching staffs that those guys had in those years where they were growing and building the sport and building the program within the community and the school. Just so thankful for the hard work that they had put in throughout all those years, and literally committed their life to Stevenson and the community and the wrestling program. So we're forever grateful.
Hey, are you going to miss not having Deerfield in your regional now that they fall into 2A? Because I know there's been a couple of times your matchups in the regionals with Deerfield were heart stoppers. So you're going to miss those guys?
Yeah, I mean they were in 2A this past year. That was the first year. As much as we love Coach Mark Pector and Aaron Cohen and competing against those guys, we just wish that the state would have made those guys 2A like 6 years previous. if they would have done that, we may have been able to squeak out a regional or two. But no, all the respect in the world for what Deerfield's been able to do with their program. As I said, Coach Pector and Coach Cohen, those guys they're top notch, and just we wrestle them in a dual meet every year, and it seems like every year it comes down to the last match. And I don't know what the record is, but it's probably darn near close to being 50-50 since we've been doing this thing. It goes back and forth each year. But yeah, they had our number in a handful of the regionals, and it was always really close. But those are the type of things that you work for all season long, so that you can put yourself in those positions to be in a fight for a dual meet win or a regional where it comes down to the last bouts. And we've definitely gotten better throughout the years as a program because of our competitions against Deerfield. That's for sure. They pushed us and helped us make us better as a program from top to bottom. When
are we going to get a dual meet between you and Antioch?
Man, let's maybe look at it for the schedule for next year. Let's start checking our
I just think
our calendars.
I just think that would have been a blast. I mean, he just came off of one of his best teams ever. But I just think it would just be a blast. I think the intensity level would be nuts. You going against your former high school coach. I think that would just be electrifying. The passion he brings, the passion you bring, the fan base that you both have. You guys have some very knowledgeable fans. He's got knowledgeable fans, and everybody. These are the same people who grind it out at the youth level. They see each other anyway. They know about it. The kids know about each other. But I think that would just be just an outstanding duel if you guys can ever pull it off.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to put that together in the future. We oftentimes say, and you know this, Coach, as well, is that we oftentimes say that all roads lead back to Waukegan. There's a lot of Waukegan connections that are throughout the state of Illinois. Obviously, the long storied history that Waukegan had long before you and I were around, and then obviously in your years, and then I was blessed to be a part of that program in the early '90s, to where there were several state trophies that were brought home, and the head coach, all that, obviously being Wilbur. And I'll just say I wouldn't be not just the wrestling coach that I am today, but I wouldn't be the man that I am today had it not been for the influence and teaching of Coach Wilbur Barrero. So I'm forever thankful for him and the staff that he had during those years. And you, Coach, people maybe don't know that you had coached me in the Hawkeyes youth wrestling club when I was maybe in third, fourth grade, way back in the day. So yeah, maybe we'll have to put something together, because we had competed against them in the past, Antioch and Stevenson, back when we were all in the same conference together. And then obviously it's always a pleasure when we get to see them now in more recent years in the Lake County Invite. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we can.
Yeah, I still give him a hard time about the Lake County Invite. The pre-meeting before the tournament, I still bust his chops. I mean, bless his heart. After 40 years of coaching, he still has that same fire that I'm here to win it, and the rest of you guys just relax and let me do my job. I mean, he's still got that same passion in him.
Well, he's from Waukegan, and that never goes away. He's always ready. He's always ready to go.
That's what I call his Antioch program, because you look at the Waukegan influence in his Antioch program, it's unreal. It really is. I mean,
yeah, no, I
mean, some of the because you.
I love the fact that
Reyes was on the team with you. Yeah,
Isaac Reyes was a senior when I was he was a junior when I was a freshman when I first got in, and then we were on the same team in 1994, his senior year, when we took fourth in state. So that was exciting. And then Ed McPherson, who's also on Wilbur's staff, whose son was a 3-time state placer. I remember watching him wrestle for Waukegan West when I was like in 6th grade. So yeah, a lot of familiar faces that Wilbur's got out there, and a lot of guys that have done a lot of great things for the sport of wrestling, not just in Waukegan and Lake County, but in the state.
He definitely earned his Hall of Fame status. Hey, speaking of, how many wins do you have right now?
You know what? This past year, we celebrated number 200 for me at Stevenson, and I'll be completely honest with you, I had no idea. I wasn't tracking it or keeping record of it. It's probably one of my things that I don't do as well is keep any kind of statistics. I give that to the assistant coaches, and yeah, I think 200 was I know 200 was earlier this year, but then I don't know what we finished at, maybe 204, 205 or something like that.
You're still young in the game, and you'll get to that 300 or Lord willing, you get to the 400 win mark and get that cake at the end of the night.
I'll just say this. I mean, it was an awesome milestone for our program, but it was truly our programs. When they had a little celebration at Stevenson, which was awesome that they did it, but I made sure to let the coaching staff and the wrestlers know that I didn't wrestle not in one of those dual meets. That wasn't my victories. Those were our as a Stevenson wrestling program's victories. So any celebration that came from that was definitely celebrated and shared amongst all the awesome people that helped make up the Stevenson wrestling family. Definitely wasn't me.
I'll accept that humbleness.
I'm just
but having officiated your teams, you break a sweat just like the wrestlers out there when you're coaching. So you're out there right alongside of them.
I can be a little bit intense at times. Every once in a while, I understand that. I will take that.
All right,
for sure. But my intensity is there's a lot of passion behind it.
No,
sure.
and it's good to have, especially in the Lake County area. It's good to have coaches like you, Lenny over at Grant, Matt over at Lake Forest, my two young guys over at Grays Lake, McKillop and Joseph. It's really refreshing, especially when you ref a lot of the coaches, the head coaches. When I look back, and a lot of the head coaches, I've had you guys on the mat as competitors, and it's really, really refreshing to watch how you guys have grown as individuals and in the adults you've turned into, and then watch you come back and give to these programs. It's really sobering from my level to see the great job you guys have done to keep this great sport alive. I mean, without the people always say, well, without the wrestlers, we'd have nothing. But, we need the coaches, we need the officials, and we need the fans. We are codependent on each other. We can't do a good job if one of those entities doesn't show up that night. If we don't have the spectators, if we don't have the coaches getting the kids ready and the kids getting ready and the officials just laying the level in the playing field, we got nothing. We got mats on the floor and no real competition. So, those of us that get it, we get it. You're right. We can't take a lot of things personal. We just have to go out there and do the best job we can and have fun with it. So, again, my hat's off to all you guys that go in there. I coached at the lower level over at Carmel Wonderline for a lot of years, and coaching is a 7-day-a-week job. It's you're coaching long after the dual meet's over. You're watching film, you're trying to do things to get ready for practice, and you got to do all that and balance your regular life. You yourself, you're an educator, so you got a lot to do, and the coaching is just part of it. But you guys, my hat's off to you. I mean, I stepped away from the coaching game. I couldn't keep up that passion that you guys have, and that was time consuming. It really was.
Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely takes up a lot of time. But one of the cool things, as you said, is that we're all in this together: wrestlers, coaches, officials, fans. One of the things that I enjoy most about wrestling getting started, obviously, that next season with that new team and set out to try and accomplish our goals. But one of the things I enjoy most is just being around the Illinois wrestling community. I mean, it's a fraternity in many respects, and being able to reconnect with all the coaches and officials, and then the old wrestling faces that we just see on the mats from November to February every year. It's really a pretty special thing. And as you said, the guys, those that get it and understand it, they definitely get it. And moving forward, we're just hoping to try and continue to grow it. More wrestlers, more coaches, and then obviously, as we talked about earlier, more officials.
Yeah,
which is a
given
priority.
the chance to change a rule, other than the college out of bounds rule that you already mentioned, but if we made you a rule maker for a day, what rule do you think you would change in high school wrestling?
Okay, I'm not going to fully commit to this one, but I've entertained, and I'm just throwing this out there. So I guess it's a little bit of a wishy-washy answer, but I've entertained the pros and the cons of the push-out rule as they have in freestyle in order to continue to create action. I'm not saying I would change it yet, and I guess I'm ducking your question a little bit, but I'd like to sit down with some other coaches and other officials. If I were to have a roundtable discussion, I'd like that one to be on the table. I'd like to hear what people's thoughts would be on that. I'm not certain did it exist in freestyle for this coming season. They freestyle oftentimes change the rules from year to year. But that would be one that I would like to talk about and potentially explore.
The push-out rule, the proposals, and we have to sit there and vote on them, and push them to the next level. But the push-out rule is unique, and a lot of times proposals don't make it through because it doesn't level the playing field. It makes it imbalanced. So a push-out rule. Here's the thought on the push-out rule. If we had a push-out rule, if we had that rule,
give me your
play,
perspective.
Would it deter from actual wrestling? Because now wrestlers are going to spend more time. And we become sumo
trying
wrestlers,
to push each other out.
You know, that's a big concern. Is the coaching style going to say, "Hey, he's at the edge. Use this attack not to take him down, not to maneuver him back in, but to get that point because you got him on the other side of the line." Concern if we ever went to a push out rule.
I appreciate and understand it. Yeah, I could definitely understand how that would change the strategy. Yeah, you're not wrestling to score points. You're just wrestling to be physical and just try and move the guy. No, I could see that. What about you, Coach? What are your thoughts on anything that you would like to see changed?
Oh no,
don't mind me spinning it back on you. Since I couldn't answer your question.
2 years ago, I liked the 4-point near fall. I put a proposal on the table.
Yeah. Okay.
And it lost by one vote. And the guy who was on my side, that would have been he would have been the deciding vote to get that rule passed. He looked across the table at me and says, "I was with you," but he started thinking about, because like a kid can get tossed in a headlock, and that's a 5-point move. And he said it's hard enough coming back at the high school level. It's hard enough coming back from 5 points. And and that's why he changed his vote
6
at the end. He just felt 6 points at the high school level was going to be detrimental. He didn't think we were ready for it. So I didn't put it back on the table this year after listening to his argument. There were bigger fish to fry for me, the hair rule and the uniform rule. But I still want to entertain, until somebody just totally talks me out of it. I mean, what do you think a 4-point, when I say a 4-point, if I count because right now I count to 2 and you get, 2 points. I count to 5 and you get 3 points. Do you see a problem with me counting to 4 and you getting 4 points?
Right.
Yeah. Do you see a problem with that?
Do I see it? I know that I know that they've done it in college. I mean, it definitely rewards your extra 2 seconds there, right? For being able to hold the guy. I mean, if you get 2 seconds, you get 2, 3 seconds, you get 2, 4 seconds, you get 2, but 5 seconds, you get 3. So you're essentially you're giving a little bit more to the guy who puts the guy on his back. I think that it would if it was implemented as they've done in college. Yeah, I think that everyone would adjust. And I'll tell you what, it's that incentive, like we always tell kids, don't get put on your back. It's that extra incentive to have to fight it and stay off your back. I guess I'm not casting my vote on it tonight, whether I'd be all in. I'd like to hear some other coaches' perspective. I try and definitely be a gatherer when it comes to these things and learn from those and ask some that are older and wiser than me and that have been around even longer than me. But I'd like to entertain that one in a roundtable conversation as well to see where everybody stands.
I like scoring in our sport. I think our spectators, our fans, they're not big on a 1-1 match unless it's a back and forth. You know what I mean? It has to be a bang bang 1-1 match. There's no, we're real hard, like we talked about earlier. We're hard on stalling. The definition in an official's mind on stalling, we're going to call stalling regardless of time in the match, regardless of the score in the match. By definition, we're supposed to promote action throughout. I mean, this goes back to the biblical days where wrestling was a gladiator type of sport. And, you stepped in the ring, and sometimes back in those days, only one person left. So it's that warrior mentality
Right.
that says, "Hey, this is a battle. This is you shouldn't have entered this circle if you weren't ready to fight it all the way to the end." So, I like scoring. I just think we need it in order to maintain our fan base.
Yeah, that's definitely a really strong point. When you see some folk style matches that are 1-0, right? But then you see freestyle matches where the scoring it could just get so high so fast. And then I guess if you ask someone who wasn't familiar with the sport of wrestling, which match they enjoyed watching more, well, they might lean towards freestyle, but based on the fact that you're able to rack up points so much faster. I had just seen a post by state official Jason Sally. He had posted on Facebook a match, the result of a match that he had reffed at some point. And I believe, Jason can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the score was 33-25 or something insane like that.
That's
I mean, that's
just team basketball.
That's just crazy.
I'd like crazy. To. Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah. That's exactly what that is. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you that the more that we could do to try and get some scores up and increase the scoring rate, it would probably only be beneficial.
You guys in the North Suburban here in this coming year, I'm gonna, as we have our meetings and things, I am going to challenge you guys to, give me some insight, because I got another 2 years on the Federation board. What should, what's some of the things we should be doing to help our sport, see what kind of ideas you guys have out there. All right. So in closing, I'd like to ask, like I do all of my podcaster interviewers or interviewees, closing remarks, anything you want to throw out there to our listening audience who predominantly are going to be officials. So, I'll give you back the floor for you to throw something out there that, words of wisdom or anything of encouragement you want to throw out there. The floor is yours once again.
No, I'd like to start by just saying thank you to all of our officials in the state of Illinois on behalf of myself, Stevenson Wrestling, and I think I can speak for the wrestling coaches throughout the state. Thank you for the hard work that you guys put in. We know that it's oftentimes a job that's unforgiving, and it's a job that doesn't pay you guys very well. We know that it's a lot of hours that you commit to your travel to and from the competitions, and oftentimes having to deal with some difficult situations when it comes to parents or coaches or wrestlers. But just want you to know how much it is that we appreciate all of your hard work and what it is that you guys do, because we wouldn't be where we're at as a state without the investment from you and the time that you take away from your lives and families in order to help our kids.
All right. Well, Coach Cook, once again, I want to thank you for the time you've donated to this podcast. And I look forward to having conversations with you down the road. So I want you and your family to stay safe in these trying times that we're in with the shelter in place and, the almost lottery to go to a grocery store type of environment that we're fighting today. But, definitely you guys stay safe out there.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Will do. Always appreciate you. And thank you, Coach Clark, for all you've done for Illinois wrestling. Thanks for all of your decades of service. And thanks for all you've done for me personally. You've been a mentor of mine and someone that I've looked up to since I was just a young little kid. And appreciate all that you've taught me, because it's more than you'll ever know. So thanks, Coach.
Again, I want to thank Coach Cook from Stevenson High School for doing the podcast with us today. I had fun. I hope the listeners can find something in that conversation that you can use to help make your officiating better, or at least you found it to be entertaining. So once again, I hope everybody stays safe, including your families, and stay on the lookout for the next podcast.